Hello everyone. Uh, what I'm about to show you is how to use a file audit tool to make the most out of your internal auditing experience to help boost your business to align to the NDIS quality and safety practice standards, but also to move you towards best practice and knowing exactly what's going on inside your service, and therefore being able to make improvements where necessary before the complaints and incidents occur. That's the idea, is to be preventative or proactive and be able to um, move towards a minimized incident, minimized complaint environment. Okay. With all of what's going on with the Commission and their um, clamping down on those providers who are not up to standard, um, this would be a recommendation of mine for you to start using for your file auditing. Okay, so what's in front of you right now is not a file audit. This is my actual audit tool. This is what we use for doing internal audits. It's very thorough. It gives a stage 1 rating, as well as the finding in column K and file audit interview results here. And then we write your quality actions um, for you to give you recommendations for how to correct your non-conformities. So as you can see here also, we've got a hidden column. So that's because we do the stage 1 in the beginning. So I'm just going to unhide that. Okay, so what happens is we would do when we're doing a complete internal audit for someone, we would do the stage 1 rating. That is when we look at your policies and procedures, and we figure out whether they have any non-conformities. Yeah, and we write down any questions we might have to have that conversation with you when we're doing face-to-face via Zoom. So stage 1 rating, stage 1 findings, and then once we finish the stage 1, we know what we've got to look at. We know where there's something missing, and we know the questions we need to ask. Now, sometimes the tools and the templates that we're going to be looking at stage 2 in our face-to-face with you as a provider, they're going to take away any of our um, questions we might have around whether we can give you a conformity on that. But we're going to want to ask you to find us the forms and templates. We know we can find them. We know we know what we're looking for. We're not coming in there to find your forms. We're coming in there to see that you can find your forms and that you know how to respond to each of these practice standards. Okay, so this is a core module, internal audit, what you're looking at right now. And of course, we have module 1, module 2, module 2A, module 3, module 4, module 5, and verification. Okay, so coming back to here, that is not what we're going to be showing you today, but I wanted you to have the context for that. So moving on, I will now go to the file audit, because what I'm going to show you is how to use a file audit template that we've created. And if you'd like to purchase that from us, then you will have a much better idea of what's going on in your service. So let's flick over to the file audit. And just in showing you why we're doing file audits, well, first of all, we are doing the same internal audit. We're doing our internal audit just as the Commission do their audit. I am an accredited NDIS quality auditor, and I've done many audits for the Commission on behalf of the Commission, and we use exactly the same methodology. We want to make sure that you're ready for that audit and that we're giving you the same advice that aligns to those quality and safety standards. Okay, so in coming back to here, if you can see, we've got stage 1, stage 2, then the rating. We have a column for opportunity for improvement. We have our finding at stage 2 and our file audit. Now, why we got that there, I'll tell you why. Because looking at your policies and procedures is one part of the triangle. It's one corner or angle in a triangle. Looking at your forms and templates and asking you questions, that's another angle in the three-sided triangle. Yeah? But the final angle in the three-sided triangle is what we find out from your staff and what we find out from your clients, because they're the ones who are going to demonstrate to us whether what you say is happening. And for you, it is going to tell you whether your staff are doing as you've asked them to do, following procedure, or whether they're not. It's going to tell you whether your staff have the knowledge they need. That's what a file audit and interview with staff and participants can give you. So you can see that it forms one angle of the three-sided triangle. No audit is complete without the file audit of both staff and participants and the interview questions that we ask them. You cannot get a clear picture of what's going on without the file audit and interview included. Yeah? So moving back to our file audit, which is what we're here for, here is what our file audit tool looks like. So this is staff file audit. As you can see, these questions are targeted here in column A to be able to find the information that speaks to many, many standards. Yeah, it's hard to be able to say this one is for that standard and this one is for that standard, because some of these questions target several standards. So we've gone through painstakingly and found out all the things we need to know to be able to assess whether somebody's evidence is demonstrable, whether it really demonstrates alignment and whether it shows us where the gaps are. So that's what these questions are for. All right, so coming to your file audit, please put the auditor's name here internally, your person that's going to perform this audit, and the date. It's really important. Here on row 3, example, name of the staff member, Jane Doe. Name should be, Jack Jones. Name, Natalie Peterson. Whatever the name is, make sure you put it, because you can't come back to these files and fix them if your internal audit person has not put the names. Yeah? Okay. So here we have documentation. We start with documentation. It says in the practice standards that we need to see 100 points of ID for every staff member. There is a breakdown of what the primary and secondary IDs are for collecting ID. So we're giving you examples here of what it would look like when we say yes and what it would look like when we say no. So what did we find in the primary ID for Jane Doe? Yes, they had a passport, and there's the passport number. It's not yes and then nothing. It's yes, there's the passport number. Okay. Now, secondary ID, we were looking for something to use as their secondary ID, which is to make up that 100 points. And the license that they had there was expired. So the moment we write no in here, it's going to go red, okay? Because that's how we've conditioned it. No, and then put a reason. Expired license, yeah? Or expired Medicare card, etc. Okay? Whichever it's going to be, you write it in there. Do they have the right to work in Australia? Yes, you've seen they're a citizen, or yes, you've seen their right to work identification. Can you find the NDIS work orientation module certificate in their file? Yes, and the date. Not yes, yes, and the date. Yeah. Because we can look at your compliance management system, but what we all need to do is look at our own files. We need to see the files are in order. Yeah. Worker screening check, date completed. If there's no worker screening check needed, the national police check. Now, people ask, do I need to have admin people have a national police check? I would. I wouldn't be employing anybody without a national police check. Nobody says you have to. The standards do not say you have to. But why would you? Why would you want to put people around money that you don't know and they don't have a national police check? So the most sensible and risk averse part of your risk management system should be that everybody has a national police check. Now, for staff who are obviously front and centre with clients, and anyone who even works in an office where you're going to have lots of clients coming in and out, they need to have first aid. If they never see a client ever in their entire work life, fine, they don't have to have first aid. But if they do, they need to have first aid. We should all have CPR. You can sometimes do first aid with CPR or first aid on its own in CPR. So here you can see we've said yes, completed on such and such a date. CPR, no, it's expired, so it's non-existent. An old CPR certificate that's expired is not a CPR, okay? You're working with children, check. It's once again, yes, and 24th of the 5th, 24. Those who are self-governing in terms of your social workers, they have their own association. So we're looking for the actual evidence that that certificate is in that person's file. So that's what you should be looking for, to make sure that the people who are running your business or doing the administration are doing it correctly. This is one way to make sure that you stay on top of things by doing file audits either every 6 months, every 3 months if you're a really large organisation, or at least annually. Okay, if you're a large organisation, I would be doing them every 3 months because that's actually how you save yourself trouble and work down the other end. Okay. Next, relevant insurances. Well, this comes down to if you're using people under their ABN, then we're going to be looking for all of these insurances. We're going to want to see valid certificates of insurance. If they're not, and as you can see, the answer says not applicable, they're not hiring any sole traders. Okay. Vehicles. We want to see a copy of the Rego certificate, a copy of the compulsory third party if you're in the state that uses that system. And we want to see their vehicle has insurance. And as you can see here, we've said no comprehensive insurance found. As soon as you say no, it goes red. That flags for you a non-conformity. It makes it easier for you to come back and know what to fix. Yeah. Code of conduct signed, employee application. We said in this example, no application seen. We must see an application of employment. We need to have information about your staff member. It needs to be in writing. Their resume, yes, we found it. Employee interview notes, if there's none on file, then you're not really doing your job properly. So what we need to see is the interview, the questions you asked and their answers, and your deliberation around their hiring. Have you got their TFN? Have you got their super forms filled out? Have you done 2 referee checks? And we've said yes, they've found. If we said no, it would go red for us. Do you have an emergency contact? Now, usually that is done in an employee application or an onboarding form, and we have to have it. By law, we have to have emergency contacts for that staff member. Have you asked the staff asked the staff member if they're working for any other services? This needs to be for you know what, you could ask it at any time you like, but what's the most sensible time and place to do it? In your employee application, or in your onboarding process. If you don't have it inside of another document, it's going to be forgotten. So really create a system. The system is that we're going to put all the information into one place here, lovely, in our employee application. So we've said no, it's not been asked on any forms, which means this provider is not able to determine whether there's a conflict of interest. So the conflict of interest form has to be said it's unsure because we never asked whether this person works for another provider. So we have to be unsure because the question wasn't asked. So record of induction, we need to see some proof that that person's been inducted, whether that be a checklist or whether it be that you complete courses on a platform like the Effective Policy platform, where we have induction and orientation and professional development training, and you can ask for a report. Training in, now here are some of the very, very specific trainings which are actually mentioned as being required within the standards. Incident management needs, your staff need training in that. Complaints handling, they need training in that. Privacy and confidentiality, they need training. Emergency and disaster management, they need training. They need training to know they need the knowledge of what constitutes harm, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. So it doesn't say they need training in this, but it says you will deploy staff who have knowledge in harm, abuse, neglect, exploitation, and how to respond appropriately. It says that they do need training in safe and enjoyable meal times, and when you have somebody who has a dysphagia or a swallowing problem, they need to have training in how to implement those mealtime management plans and understanding of what dysphagia means and how it plays out. Training and induction in infection control. It's not a one-off. It's something that should be done on a regular basis, say annually. Training and induction on medication and waste management. If you're registered for that module, then your staff need to be trained in medication and in waste management. They're two different modules. Medication management is one module and waste management is another. And if it's in your scope, your staff need to be trained. But as you can see, we've done a demonstration of it's not applicable for this fictional provider because it wasn't in their scope in the first place. If you're registered for 2A, then your staff need to be trained in just understanding what positive behaviour support and restrictive practice are. We have a 3-part module series which basically explains the framework and explains positive behaviour support and positive behaviour plans and restrictive practice. If you're registered for Module 1 or a few services under Module 1, which is high intensity personal activity, we would need to see that your staff are trained to be able to undertake those services for your clients. Then there's professional development. What else did you do on top of that? What else have you trained yourself or your staff in? We would want to see evidence that there is, if it says somewhere in the file that someone's done some training on governance, we'd want to see proof, otherwise it doesn't exist. Yep. So a nice certificate goes down well. Also, reports from a platform such as the Effective Policy one shows which courses people have completed. We need to see in the person's file, in your staff member's file, a record of supervision. We need to see that something is written in some way, shape or form to show that that staff member we're looking at receives supervision formally. We're looking for performance reviews of staff, and that needs to be done annually. Okay, so every year a person that works for you is entitled to have a performance review. Okay, any additional comments that you want to write as internal auditors, right there. Now here you may do a staff interview as well. The questions you want to know to get to the basis of what you need to know to be able to really clearly find the third angle in that triangle. So, or we call it triangulating the evidence. Yeah, there's 3 triangles. The policies one, the knowledge and the templates and forms is another, and what actually happens with staff and participants is the third angle in that triangle. So once again, auditor name, date, the staff member. You would want to try to make sure that you do the same staff that you interview are the same staff that you've audited, because then you've got it's really not sensible to audit 5 staff and then interview 5 others, because you're missing that alignment to their file. Yeah, you've got much better evidence if you interview the same staff that you do a file audit for. So we want to know whether your staff members, and you want to know, what's expected of you as a support worker. What do you think your job is? Did you have an induction and orientation on onboarding? Now there may well have been one, but maybe the staff member can't remember it, and if they're not remembering it, perhaps it needs a bit of redevelopment, because from my experience, if someone's been inducted, probably they're going to remember it. Do you have an organisational identity badge? We need to make sure that people have photo ID. Regarding complaint management, how do you know what you are required to do for a participant when they want to make a complaint? Do you believe you have the competency and training required for providing the level of supports you do? Here you'll find out whether they know or feel confident or really feel underwhelmed or overwhelmed with their job. It's really good information to have, and information we're looking for too, because if you're deploying people and not giving them the skill they need, no good things can happen in that space. Good things don't happen in a space where staff don't feel confident and don't know what they're doing. Do you receive feedback on how you're performing? Really important. That's in the standards that staff will receive feedback, and we want to know that they feel they are, that they feel they're receiving feedback, that they can tell us that they're having performance appraisals and supervision, not just that there's some notes in a file that say they do. How do you report on changes or concerns? This is really making sure that your staff understand how to show or let you know that there's deterioration or significant changes in a person's needs. Because as with the case of Anne-Marie Smith, nobody told anybody about her wounds and how they were developing. We need to know when there's good things happening and when there's risky things happening as well. So who do you report any of these concerns to? We need to make sure your staff know how and who to report to. Who would they want to get advice from if they needed it immediately? What would you do if your participant suffered an injury at work? We need to know if you've explained to them for each participant, what they would do in a medical emergency. We need to know whether they handle any money for the participants. Then we need to make sure that that process is in line with the money and belongings practice standard, that your staff understand what the do's and don'ts are for handling money for participants. Do you administer any medications? Obviously. Why we put this in here is because sometimes we get a lot of providers who aren't registered for medication management, yet their staff are delivering assistance. And a lot of that can be misunderstood by thinking, if I only remind a participant to have their medication, I'm not assisting with medication. Well, in fact, you are. And if you're bringing the packet to them, you are assisting with medication. And if you're taking it out of the packet and giving it to them, you are administering medication. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. So this helps us to identify if people are working outside of their scope and if your organisation is delivering services outside of its scope. We need to make sure that people know how to manage infectious materials and clinical waste. If you're registered for the waste management module, and you should be if you're doing personal care, and you should be if you're doing medication management. So we just ask them to give us a brief explanation of how they're managing it, and then you can write any additional comments. Now, moving right along to the participant file, which is, again, another very rich source of information. Once again, auditor, date. Here in the sampling, we've said how the commission methodology works is that we take 10% and we do a 10% sum of how many clients you have. And then if you have 100, then we're going to audit 10. But if you only have 7 clients, we're not going to do the square root of that. We're just going to do 5. And if you only have 2 clients, we can only audit 2 clients. So that is the logic behind the methodology. Okay, so we've got example John Doe again. First up, most sensibly, you're going to be looking to make sure everyone has a consent to opt out of audit. We're also going to be looking for consents in other things. May I suggest, as I always do, your consent form is in one place on one document. You have multiple consents on the one document because you will lose consents and you will forget to do them if you have 5 or 6 or 7 different types of consent documents. So try to systemize it by putting it into one document. So we're looking to see that supports are person-centered. The first thing that tells us whether something's person-centered is whether you've collected information to that effect. If we can't find anything around culture, gender, medical information, family, what you like to do in your spare time, the participant likes to do in their spare time, what their communication needs are, if we can't find these things where they've been collected in an assessment, then we're pretty sure we're not going to find a person-centered support plan, are we? So we need family carer information. We need to make sure your assessment incorporates all of the person-centered ideas and concepts. We need to see that a person has been explained how the feedback and complaint system works. We need to see that service agreements have been signed by the participant, that we can see documented proof of that. We need to, and if someone is incapable of signing, it's just not possible, then we need to find an email or some kind of backup evidence that says, this person needs these supports, is unable to sign. So we need to see records of communication needs, their goals, their strengths, their needs, their values. In place of goals, you could always say, what are their aspirations, not just their goals. We can use aspirations, their visions. In this one, we said, yes, we found that all in the support plan. There's a fully completed initial assessment. We need to see an assessment started this process of. If you just went straight to a support plan, goals, strengths, needs, wishes, that wouldn't be enough. We need to see all this information that we've talked about here is being collected. That's what we're looking for. So we need to see all the varieties of consents, which might be around information that we're going to collect and what we're going to do with it on your behalf. We want to see that you're consented to the types of service that we're going to be providing to you. We want to see that you've got a risk assessment. There isn't one client type that doesn't get a risk assessment. Every client under the NDIS receives a risk assessment at the time they onboard with you, and then at minimum annually thereafter. Now, hopefully it would be more than annually, but at minimum annually. The same for support plans. At minimum, they must have a new support plan annually. It doesn't matter how long their plan is funded for with the NDIA. What matters is that you give them a new support plan at minimum annually, okay? And that goes for the assessment as well. It doesn't mean you have to redo the entire assessment. It means you do an update and you see if anything's changed and you make changes to that original assessment to reflect that. You can do that by using a variation. We have comprehensive assessments that have the capacity to factor in variations for additional assessments. So they're documents that need to be done on an annual basis, and we're looking to see, you want to look and see that things are being done annually. So support plans created in addition to the NDIS plan. Sometimes we see providers who don't understand how this works, and they're using the NDIA plan as the support plan, and that's not how it works. That's a high-level support plan that's come out of a government department. You must give each client your own developed support plan, which translates the goals and information from that NDIS plan they came to you with. We're looking for, of course, the support plan being person-centered, and it incorporates all of the information that we discussed there. Evidence of the review and evaluation, at least annually. We want to see that,
Have you assessed to see whether these people have reached their goals and therefore adjusted those goals? We need to see that you've let them know what their rights and responsibilities are. There is no prescription on how that should be done. However, it seems to be the easiest way to give people a welcome pack on their admission. There's no point in giving it to them a week later. You give rights and responsibilities to people first up on their first appointment with you when they're coming into your service. You can do this in writing. It needs to be easy read. It needs to be plain English because you don't know which person are going to have which need. You might want to do it via video. There's no prescription. There's just some sensible ways to be able to do it. Handbooks achieve this as well, but you need to make sure that your handbook is in a mode of communication that the person receiving it will be able to digest. So that might mean it's in easy read with pictures. It might mean it's just in plain English, or it might mean that you have to sit there and do it with the person, go through it and explain things to them or their carer. So every situation could be different. People have to know about confidentiality policies and what you do with the information. Once again, that's best done in the rights and welcome pack. If they're having medication management, we need to see that people have consented to this, and the best place to have that is integrated into your consent form. If they've got a mealtime plan, we need to see they've given you permission to operationalise that mealtime plan for them. If they're receiving high-intensity supports like bowel care or catheter care, we need to see that they've given you permission to deliver that. Best place is in the one consent form. We need to see that there's formal evidence of collaboration between you and your service and other providers and allied health workers. You must work together. You need to, if you've got a multidisciplinary team or a number of providers delivering services, try and have meetings on a regular basis. It would be the way things were done before the NDIS came in and we had this market separation where people are trying to keep their clients separate. What we want to see is collaborative work with other providers, and we need to record what happens in those collaborative sessions. So minutes of the meetings where you've collaborated with people. It's easy to make a collaboration template. It's just like a meeting minutes template, and it is of benefit to the client that you all work together, not work separately. Where a participant has exited a service from your service to go to another provider, you are required to give that provider what's called a transition plan, which I call, another name for that is like a discharge plan. Yeah. And what it does is it outlines all the risks that person that you know of about that person, because that can save injury and a life and time spent for that provider finding out on their own what that person's risks are. So let's think of the participant and not of ourselves losing a client to another provider. Let's think about the participant and take ourselves out of the picture. You don't have to like the other provider, but what you do have to do is send a transition plan with that client, okay? Even if you're on bad terms with the family or the client or the other provider, please do the right thing and send a transition plan. Any additional comments you might have. Then it comes to the participant interview. Now, it's a given that some participants are not so good at participating in interviews. It's a given that some of your participants may be destabilised by having an interview. We understand that sometimes you're going to be interviewing a carer or the nominee or a guardian, and that's all. If that's all that can be done, then that's fine. But don't think just because somebody has an intellectual disability that you shouldn't be interviewing them. Do the best that you can to interview each of your participants where it is safe to do so. Okay? So you want to find out if they know what services they get, if they know where they receive, where do they come, what site, whereabouts, what happens, what do they understand about your service delivery. In still houses, do they live alone or with housemates? You know, they're happy with the support they get from you. Is the privacy and dignity respected? And I mean, in that sense, is anyone ever trying to get them dressed or undressed with their bedroom door open? You know, are people in your workforce ensuring a person's personal privacy, therefore ensuring their dignity? Okay, speaking to them in a poor manner in front of other people does not constitute good privacy and dignity. Do you think your beliefs and values are respected? Sometimes you might have to explain what that is. You know, do you get to go to the churches that you want to go to, or are you kept away from churches if you hate churches? Um, you know, do you still get to keep in touch with people that you knew and know and other groups? Is there anything you're missing that you did have before you came here and you don't have now? These things are factored into the practice standards. We've just translated them into very simple questions. Is your independence encouraged? And if you have to explain that and break that down, you know, does somebody do things for you all the time when you'd actually like to try and do them yourself? And are you supported to make some choices? You don't have to ask it in this way. You know, when you want to buy something, does somebody help you to make up your mind, or or do they say just buy this one? Does somebody get you a whole bunch of brochures on something and help you to wade through them? You know, we're trying to keep people living as independently as possible, and for many people, we're trying to teach them how to live independently. Are your supports and your home free from violence, abuse, neglect? So you're probably not going to say that in those words to the client. You're going to say, you know, do you ever feel threatened? Do you ever feel unsafe? Do you ever, are you treated well in the home that you're in, especially for SIL homes, because there can be a lot of abuse in SIL homes if it's not managed properly. And are you able to choose to speak with, are you able to choose who to speak to when you've got a complaint investigation, or if you want to make a complaint? Do you know what to do? You just ask it really simply. Do you know how to make a complaint? Who would you go to? Would that be scary or not scary? That sort of thing. Are you involved in choosing the persons you work with? Really important, because sometimes people are not involved and they need to be. Is the organisation flexible? So do you get to change your mind when you want to change your mind? Can you change your services when you want to? If you don't want to do that, can you do something else? Is that easy to do? Do you have a service agreement? Do you have a copy of it? That might be to a carer, or it might be to the actual participant. Do you have a support plan? Do you know what a support plan is? Have you ever seen your support plan? Because part of the practice standards say that support plan and its results will be discussed with that participant. Do you choose your own lifestyle and goals and wishes? Do you get to do what you want? That's basically a good way to say that. Do you know anything about whether your goals are reviewed? Do we change your goals? Do you know when you've reached your goal, or your wish and you've completed it? We want to see how involved people are in the service delivery you're giving. Does the support worker help you with your medications? Here's where we find out a lot of the time that people are helping with medication when they're not registered to do so. And if that's what's happening in your organisation, you want to know. Do your support workers handle your money? We want to know how they do it, and you need to refer back to the practice standard to find out how it should be done properly. And I also have a training module on handling participant money and belongings. It's really important. Then additional comments, okay? So this is how you use the effective policy staff and participant file audit tool to really dig down deep and get the answers that you need to make your service as good as it possibly can be. So thanks for watching this, and if you want to purchase this tool, please just go to the link below in YouTube, and if you want to contact Effective Policy, please try inquiry@effectivepolicy.com.au. Thanks very much for watching.